Hey guys, Bartell's Bookshelf here, and once again, I've gone a little quiet. I'm very sorry about that. My cat, Woody, unfortunately passed last week. He was our guy. He was our little one-eyed bear. He meant a lot to me and Aaron. We were really attached to him. He was at least 20 years old. We think he might have been even older. We found him in the wild when I was a little kid, so we don't know exactly how old he was, but he was an old boy, and he was starting to decline at the end there, and we were pretty broken up about it, but we took him to the vet, and the vet said that he, on top of, having fluid in his lungs and his stomach, he probably had a brain tumor because he had a head tilt that we were concerned about, and it was just all these things, we made the really hard decision to put him down, and I was pretty broken up about that for, all last week, and I couldn't find the motivation to film anything. I mean, he was my guy, he was my little buddy, so... yeah, I love you, Woody, and yeah, so pour one out for Woody, the amazing little one-eyed cat, little baby blue. But I want to get back into making videos again, and I've been reading kind of slow, so I figure I'll just do a little update about the two things I finished and a couple of the other things that I'm gonna start soon. So the first thing I finished was Slumber Party by Christopher Pike. I actually read this alongside his other novel, Weekend, which I don't have because I sold it before I could make a video about it. I've just been in the mood for some Christopher Pike, some short, quick, sort of YA, middle grade horror. And Christopher Pike always brings the goods. And I wanted to read this book and Weekend because those were his first two novels. And they both have very similar plots. This is about a group of girls who go on a skiing trip and start realizing that someone's taking revenge on them for something terrible that happened years ago. And Weekend is about a group of teens going on a trip to Mexico and, someone taking revenge on them for a horrible thing that happened. So very, very similar plots. They're kind of like the yin and yang of each other, which I don't know if was intentional or not, but they're both very interesting. I liked Weekend a little bit more because it's longer. It's like 200. It's like 60 pages longer than this. This book's really short. It's like 170 pages. Weekend was more fleshed out and a lot more bonkers. This being his first novel, I felt like he was being held back a little bit because there's stuff like there's lots of intimations of like supernatural stuff, and then at the end of the story they kind of shoehorn in sort of a logical explanation for everything that felt a little tacked on. And from what I read about it, that's exactly what happened. He had a more overt supernatural element, and then Scholastic had him tone it down. I'm not sure why, but you can feel that leaking out even more in Weekend, which has even more overtly supernatural stuff. Although in that book, it's much more it's more implied than anything. Nothing overtly supernatural happens, but there's a lot of stuff about like omens and past lives and things, just stuff that pops up in a lot of Christopher Pike's work. Yeah, I like Christopher Pike. He's not the most sort of elegant of writers, I guess you'd say, but there's something almost like Grindhouse about him with, these very like overheated plots of like teenagers getting into crazy shenanigans, horror shenanigans. But then there's also these weird sort of like almost surrealist and like cerebral moments. It's a lot more sort of like heady and weird than something like Goosebumps, which I'm really sad I never grew up with these. But yeah, Slumber Party was okay. Not my favorite. It was a little short. It was a little underdeveloped. But you can kind of see the little flashes of gonzo madness that sort of started to pop up in his later career. I still have a ton of Christopher Pike books. You can see the little pile right there. That's all Christopher Pike. So I will get to more of him eventually, but yeah, so far I enjoyed these two. And then the next thing I finished, this was an interlibrary loan, so I can't take this sticker off. It's Will Storr versus the Supernatural by Will Storr. I'll just put a picture up so you don't have to stare at that the whole time. So yeah, I've talked about it a little bit before. I'm fascinated with ghosts. I love ghost stories. I'm fascinated with why we tell ghost stories, where they come from, how prevalent they are through our culture. Absolutely 100% don't believe in ghosts. I'm a bona fide, skeptic. I totally dyed-in-the-wool, skeptic. I don't believe in any of that stuff. But I'm fascinated by it culturally, historically, folklorically, if that's a thing. And someone I know who's also very interested in ghosts recommended this book, or not recommended the book, but they mentioned that they were reading it and it sounded interesting, so I thought I'd check it out. And honestly, it was really really disappointing. Will Storr is or was a journalist for a bunch of British newspapers like The Guardian and stuff like that. And this book is ostensibly his sort of search for the supernatural, sort of trying to understand ghosts and ghost hunting and what sort of evidence there is out there for ghosts. Kind of similar to a book I read last year called A Natural History of Ghosts, although this is a lot more sort of informal and self-effacing and comedic than that, which I was okay with. In fact, for the first like third of it, I was like really enjoying it. You know, it's not. He makes a point at the beginning of the book to say, you know, like, I'm not going to immediately go into things trying to debunk them. I'm not going to like immediately assume everyone's crazy. I'm going to assume everyone's telling me the truth. You know, I'm going to try and come at this with an open mind. And I was like, cool. You know, you're a journalist. You're trying to be objective. You know, and then as the book goes on, he just falls more and more into sort of the whole ghost hunting thing. And until at one point, like halfway through the book, where he meets with Maurice Grosse, who is one of the main investigators behind the Enfield haunting, and he basically just has this epiphany where he essentially realizes to himself, you know, like, oh, like skeptics are never going to have enough evidence to believe, and the believers are never going to have enough evidence to disbelieve, you know, but the skeptics are just as bad as the believers, you know, in terms of their like dogmatic, refusal to believe in things, you know, and that really just didn't sit right with me as somebody who considers himself a proud skeptic. I'm not against the idea of ghosts. I don't I'm not going to automatically discount, you know, that there could be something out there. And the idea that I'm just as bad as the believers, who some of them are incredibly deluded in their belief, really annoyed me. And it's not that I have anything against people believing in these things, you know, that's what it all comes down to, belief. If you believe in it, great. If it brings some semblance of solace and understanding and something to you, you know, that's great. He goes into a lot of that in the book, where he interviews a lot of different sort of ghost hunters and talks about why they got into the business. And a lot of it is just that desire to feel like there's something else out there to help you understand, as they say, the eternal question, what happens when we die and we don't know. What annoyed me was sort of his smugness and his complete self-assurance about it, that he was right about, you know, skeptics, that they would refuse to believe no matter what evidence he presented. And it also really annoyed me that he absolutely refused to really entertain or follow up on any opposing viewpoints. He just goes to see a lot of people who are interested in ghosts, and at the end of it basically says, wow, there's a lot of evidence for ghosts, and doesn't critically break down any of that at all. There's two moments where he goes to see people who don't believe. He sees a psychologist and a philosopher, and they get one chapter each, whereas like the rest of the book is all, you know, people who believe. And it's just very one-sided, with this like illusion of objectivity that really doesn't exist, especially because he wraps up the book in the epilogue talking about, there's a lot of evidence for ghosts. What evidence? The evidence of a few people who have said they've seen something, some strange experiences you've had that you can't explain. That's not evidence. There was one moment that really annoyed me, where he's staying in the world's most haunted house in Britain. He doesn't give the location away because he doesn't, you know, the owner of the house doesn't like people like visiting and things like that. He stays in this supposedly haunted room, and in the corner of the room behind a chair, a reclining chair, he hears breathing, and he runs out, and he's like terrified. And the ghost hunter that he's staying with says, wow, a few people only last 20 minutes in there, or something like that. Most people only last 20 minutes in there. And he's immediately just like, wow, that's a super haunted room. And I'm just like, no, man, like, you're a journalist. Go investigate, you know, go back into the room, see what it is. It could be a draft. It could be noisy pipes. It could be your imagination. It could be so many things. But he's so eager in the book to just immediately say, ghosts. It's ghosts. And for a journalist who's like trying to be objective and to approach things and, you know, sort of with an open mind, like, I don't know, something about that just really rubbed me the wrong way, especially the fact that he feels the need to lecture to people at the end about how, you know, skeptics are just as dogmatic and just as bad as believers. And there's things where he just doesn't do basic research. I mean, he talks about doing research a little bit, you know, reading about different hauntings and things. But for example, like if someone brings up something, you know, about ghosts, like EMF, he just takes it at face value. He doesn't explore any of the science behind EMF or anything like that. Or like one thing that really, really annoyed me was he meets this British druid who tells him about the stone tape theory, which is the idea that, you know, ghosts are sort of psychic energy that can be recorded in the iron that's within, you know, bricks, within stone, the stone tape, because tapes have iron oxide, all that stuff, whatever. So it's the idea that like stone walls can sort of record memory or whatever, or psychic events. That's the basic idea. And he speaks to this druid who tells him this whole thing. And he thinks, wow, that's a great theory, for ghosts, that makes a lot of sense, and then doesn't follow up on it at all. And the reason that annoyed me is because I'm enough of a ghost fanatic to know that the name of that theory and the broad strokes of it come from the Nigel Neal television movie, The Stone Tape, from the 70s, which it was a fictional creation, and they just took it and ran with it and said, oh, this is the explanation for ghosts now. It was made up by a sci-fi author, and not once anywhere in the book does he investigate this, does he look into it further. He doesn't bring up Nigel Neal or any of that stuff at all. He doesn't go into anything behind it. And I know, because I looked it up, some people will say, oh, well, there were a few antecedents before that, but they were not nearly as detailed as the current theory is, nor were they named the stone tape theory as something that was made up by an author. That's like if you call, something that was in the Poltergeist movies the poltergeist theory. It's ridiculous. You're taking fiction and you want to believe something so badly that you're attaching all of this value on it to a fictional work, and I get it. I love ghost stories. I adore them. That's why I'm reading this stuff, but there's a line between fiction and reality, and it's important that be maintained, And the other thing that annoyed me about it was that he paints skeptics as like fundamentally incurious people who, will never be satisfied with any evidence, who will never, explore beyond their confined, closed-minded boundaries. I'm reading your book because I'm interested in this stuff, because I want to know about it. I'm fascinated with ghosts. I don't believe in them, but I want to know what's the information out there. What do people believe? What evidence is there, if any? That's why I'm reading all of this stuff. I have so many books about ghosts because of this, and here I am being told that I'm incurious and I'm dogmatic, and it just really annoyed me. And I don't want to go on too much about it, because I know this is a very, very sensitive and very powerful subject for some people. Some people just really stridently believe, and if you do, and you're living your life, you're happy, that's great. I'm happy for you. I don't like being talked down to, when I'm the one reading your book trying to learn things, you know what I mean? Especially when you're being so uncritical and lazy yourself, it's intellectual laziness. That's what it is, masquerading as objectivity. That's what annoyed me about it. Anyway, so I was just so frustrated by that as I mentioned, I was like, I need more ghost books. I want to read more nonfiction ghost stuff. And I found some stuff on my shelf that I've been reading, and another book that I got from the library that both just so happen to have the same title. I'm a little over halfway through this book, Ghostland, An American History and Haunted Places by Colin Dickey. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's a short nonfiction sort of history book where it's about exploring different haunted places, haunted locations in America, like the Winchester Mystery House and things like that. Unpacking the stories behind it, the ghost stories behind it, whether there's any truth to those stories and what those stories kind of say about us culturally. And it's really, really interesting. I'm enjoying a lot of it. It's maybe a little dry in parts, but yeah, I have no issues with it, unlike the other book. So yeah, that's interesting, and I'll talk more about that once I finish. And then I also got this from Interlibrary Loan, so this has a big sticker on it. Sorry, but I'll put a picture of it so you can see the cover. But this is another book, Ghostland by Edward Parnell. The full title of this, is In Search of a Haunted Country, and this is basically similar to the American Ghostland, except this is about England. This is about the UK. And as anybody who watches this channel or who knows me knows, English ghost stories are some of my favorites. I love them, and England has always fascinated me as a country, as a culture, especially in terms of their ghost stories, their sort of horror, their folk tales, all that stuff. And also, Aaron and I are going to be visiting the UK again over Christmas to deal with some family stuff. Again, long story. And I guess I sort of saw this as like my primer, for going back to the UK, for exploring that imminently haunted country, So yeah, I really hope that's good. It's had a lot of praise, and I was reading online it won some awards and things, so I'm really looking forward to that. I hope that's good. In fact, actually, this specifically deals with ghost literature, because the author is the author also writes ghost stories and ghost novels, and it's about how he's dealing with a family tragedy, and in that sort of tragedy he turned to the ghost stories of his youth. So it's sort of a history of England through the ghost story and sort of cultural history and that kind of thing. So that sounds really, really cool. Really look forward to that. But yeah, that's basically all that's been going on right now. As I said, I've had a pretty rough week. There's some family stuff going on in England. It's been tough. So, and I'm on the top of that, I'm still in a pretty bad slump. It's been hard to find the motivation to read. So it's just a lot of things. So yeah, I just wanted to make this quick update, just kind of let you guys know I'm not dead and to know what I'm getting into. I'm really sorry. It's been so hard for me to stay connected to everybody. I try to watch everybody's videos and comment on them, but it's just I don't have the social battery, and it really sucks because I'm not gonna make friends if I'm not interacting, But it's hard. So I hope you guys understand, and if you guys enjoy my videos, please, as I always say, like, comment, subscribe, interact with me. I love talking about books. I wish I had more people to talk about books with. That's kind of why I started this whole channel, but that's about it. So until then, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.